You've been given the gift of a discovery meeting, and you want to be able to present with clarity and conviction, and then listen, actively listen to hear what their needs are so that you can see or provide a solution that gives impact to the problem that they're stating. Welcome to Driving Growth, the go-to-market podcast for traditional B2B businesses that are looking to build systems to create predictable revenue growth. In short, turning their company into a revenue factory. I'm your host, Steve Whittington, president of Roadmap and a believer in one simple truth. Sustainable growth is not an accident. It's engineered, and my company, Roadmap, is a builder of go-to-market systems. On today's show, we're talking about one of the most critical parts of the sales process, the discovery call. So whether you're a seasoned sales pro or just getting started, mastering the discovery call can make or break your deal flow. So let's get into the best practices to prepare for a discovery call that actually converts. Okay, the first thing you need to do, which sets you apart, unfortunately, from so many of the discovery calls that you get, is preparing for it, doing a deep dive into knowing who it is you're talking to and what their company does and all the different challenges that their company faces. So many people, I've experienced it so many times where I show up to somebody doing a discovery call on myself, and I'm sure many of you that are listening can put their hands up and say this has happened to them, where they are literally learning about you and the organization in the discovery call. And that's just sloppy. That's just unprofessional as far as I'm concerned. So how do you go about doing this? Well, first and foremost, review their LinkedIn, read through it, see what they've been posting, that sort of stuff. See the shared content, see the mutual contacts that you have. If you're in an industry cluster, you might know Bob who knows them. And that's something that then you could reach out to Bob and say, hey, what can you tell me about this guy? I was at a networking function, a long table networking function just recently, and I watched that happen. It's like, hey, can you tell me about X? And the person's like, why? He goes, well, you're involved with them, and I've got a discovery call with them. That's the exact conversation. He's like, well, who are you talking with? Well, I'm talking with Rob. And he's like, oh, okay, This is what you need to know. So, use your mutual contacts to get context to understand, prepare for this. This is your one shot to actually move this into your pipeline and to make a revenue impact for your organization. So, of course, go to the website, read through the website. And if there's omissions, if there's errors, all that stuff is relevant to helping you understand what it is that you're needing to be doing in your discovery call, depending on the business that you do. Do a Google search. Find out if there's press releases. Find out stuff about them. Google search the individual. Google search the company. All that sort of stuff. Take your time doing investigative research. If you have AI tools that you can use, like Humanic AI, you can have profiles on their personality so you can understand who they are and what is important to them, what the way you should approach talking to them, their motivators, their personality traits, that sort of stuff. There is so much stuff that you can do to prep for your discovery session, to learn about your prospect and to learn about the company. And for myself, it's at least 15 minutes with all these tools, if not more, that I do a deep dive to get prepared for when I'm having a conversation. If somebody has given me the opportunity to have a conversation, I'm going to make sure that I learn as much as possible about them so that I can provide impact to that in that conversation. Okay, so why do all that? Obviously, all this research helps you tailor the questions that you need to ask, helps you build rapport faster, and really it shows that you care and that you also understand their industry and understand their world. And that will lead that'll go a long way to actually advancing the sale. Okay, you've done your prep, you're prepared for it. You've done your research and you're getting into the call. So before you get into the call, you want to make sure that you prepare all your tools. So, your mic, your camera, you're making sure your internet, you've got your CRM up so that any data that you have about the company is there that you can reference and you can write into your note-taking tools, all that sort of stuff. Make sure all that stuff is available. Have your calendar handy, have the files that you need to be showing all up and ready. is the worst thing you can do is be fumbling through trying to find stuff while you're doing a discovery call. So have all that prepared so that you're not wasting any of their time and your time in the actual call. Now, you've gotten into the call. So back up. You've done your research. You're prepared. You're now getting into the call. You start the call with ACE, which means that you have to set an agenda, you have to confirm the timelines with them, and you have to set expectations. So the agenda, you have a list of the topics that you're going to cover. So the conversation is structured with intention. You always want to be mindful if you have an hour booked or if you have 30 minutes booked, confirm. It's like, hey, is the top of the hour still good for you? And sometimes people say, hey, I got to jump out 15 minutes early. And the worst thing you can have is if you're in a discovery call and somebody's like, oh, wait, I've got 5 minutes left, and you haven't been prepared for that and you still have things you need to cover. So mitigate that at the beginning, be mindful of their time, respectful of their time, and ask them, confirm, and then if there's any information you need to validate about, stuff that you're going to be asking, that sort of stuff, just make sure that you have all that in place. Okay. And then the last thing is part of the agenda is set expectations. So what is the ideal outcome of this conversation? And have that listed up front so that that can be satisfied for both parties by the end of the call. Okay, so you know your prospect, you're prepared, you've used ACE to actually set clear objectives. What's next? What's the next thing you want to be prepared for that you want to do in this discovery call? Okay, if you have ever read the book Blink, it talks about how people get thin sliced and that immediately they form an impression on you. So the first 2 minutes of your discovery call forms that impression. It sets the tone. So start with a warm, confident greeting. Do your ACE so that you've set the agenda, you've confirmed the expectations are clear, and then make sure that you have a check-in with them that confirms it. Does that sound good for you? Or is this what we want to accomplish? So now it's collaborative and that they've confirmed it and agreed to what it is that you're going to be covering. And then you go into your discovery process. Hey, you're listening to the show because you want to figure out how to grow. The first ratio, the first thing that I do with CEOs is I determine what the true cost of growth is. That becomes the baseline from which you make all your decisions from. That is part of the mathematical model. That is part of our toolkit. But today, you can go to weareroadmap.com and book me. And in 30 minutes, we can give you a really good understanding of what your cost of growth is. Now, let's get back to the show. Okay, so now you're into the discovery call. And this is where your playbook should be coming to force. You don't want to wing this. This has to be a structured conversation based on organizational history of what works and doesn't work and what's needed for you to move a sale forward. Now, you will have things into your discovery playbook that are customized on a per client basis off of the research that you've done. That's a certain, right? Make sure you're asking in that open-ended, insight-driven questions with triggers to dig deeper, like tell me more about that. You want to have your red flags as to how to qualify or unqualify your prospect. And this is where your sales methodology really comes to life. And in episode 7, we talked about sales process. And within that, we talked a little bit about sales methodology. So you could be using challenger sale methodology where you're challenging the prospect to think about a different type of outcome. You could be employing at this stage even BANT, where you're trying to get, budget, authority, need, timeline. Depending on your sales process, the methodology will come to life, and you'll be looking at this in your discovery playbook to see if they move to the next phase. Your playbook ensures consistency. It helps you stay on track and that you don't forget to ask certain types of questions. And it makes it easier for you as a sales leader to scale and coach your process. Now, through all this, one of the most overlooked soft skills that throughout this podcast we've heard come up a few times is the ability to connect the dots in the discovery process and uncover needs as to how they're going to create impact. Essentially, how can you be an active listener? Your prospect is going to be telling their story. You need to uncover the impact of the needs and the problems that they're stating that your solution can provide. Okay, so you need to be thinking about while this story is being unfolded, what is the cost of the problem to their business? How is it affecting their team, their revenue, or their customer experience? What happens if they don't solve this problem? There's a variety of things that you can work through depending on what it is that you're selling. If you're selling equipment, for instance, you need to be saying the impact is that they're going to expand their market share. You want to make sure that this is circled back to the impact for them as to why you're talking at them. So you got to connect the dots all the way back from your research to the story that they're telling through the playbook to the impact that you're going to provide for your client. This is where you move from just being a vendor that sells them something to a strategic partner. You're not just listening and then checking boxes. You're actively listening, translating their pain into business consequences as to how you can solve for it. And needs, if they have needs and they're trying to scratch that itch, that's created the interest for them to have this conversation. But you being able to translate that to impact that you can provide, that creates urgency to move it forward. This is a very important kind of part of the whole discovery call. So you've done all those things. Research, properly prepared. You have an ACE intro. You're using a playbook. You're connecting the dots. You have identified impact. And now you have to end with strength, end with clear next steps. Recap what's been uncovered, what's been learned. Confirm what has to happen next. And that, again, should be part of your sales process. Refer back to episode 7. And then lock in the next action. Always set the next action. Never, ever leave. Always set the next action, whatever it might be. So an example is, hey, thanks for sharing all that. It sounds like, you have been facing this problem for a while. And if we can solve for that, the impact will be reducing your stalled revenue. I'll put together a tailored proposal and then we can review it on next Wednesday. At this time, does that work for you? Yes. Okay, let's book it in. And I'm looking forward to having that next conversation with you. And that is how you complete a discovery process with clear steps. Okay, so you've completed the discovery call. So now, of course, you're documenting all this on a deal in your CRM, saying when the next action is going to be, what the tasks are that you have to do, like creating a proposal or whatever it might be. And then, of course, you want to do a call recap to the prospect that recaps everything that has been uncovered so they can then reflect on the impact that was discovered in the call, and that they also are informed about when the next steps are. And if they have any action items that came out of it, like they might have had to get you stuff so you could prepare for the proposal, that sort of thing. So all that is now documented in the CRM. It's visible for everybody. Your sales leaders can see that, hey, yep, discovery call happened. Here's the call recap. Here's what was uncovered. Here's the next steps. Here's the next meeting booked. The deal is progressing. So to recap, there is a lot that goes into this process. And think about it this way. If you are an actor that is delivering a play to an audience, you have to do a ton of rehearsal first, which is all the discovery that you have to do first, all the research that you have to do first, so that these actors are doing all this rehearsal so they can deliver their lines with clarity and conviction. And you want to show up the same way as a seller. You've been given the gift of a discovery meeting, and you want to be able to present with clarity and conviction, and then listen, actively listen to hear what their needs are so that you can see or provide a solution that gives impact to the problem that they're stating. And then, of course, after the play is done, you have to make sure that there's, reviews that go out, and this is a sales recap and all that sort of stuff. And everything is documented in your system of record, so there's clarity on how things are going, how things are progressing. And your system, of course, will learn about what it is that you're doing to help amplify the process and enhance your playbook that you have that's making you go through the discovery smoother with more consistency. So when you're bringing a new rep on, the discovery process is something critical that needs to be practiced. Practiced to not necessarily perfection, but to the point of high level of competence. This is a critical step for filling your pipeline. If you have a pipeline problem, you may want to be looking at how your discovery calls are occurring. And that's where you go in and you can review game tape and you can do sales coaching, that sort of stuff. But master the processes and the steps needed for prepping for your discovery calls, executing your discovery calls, and then following up and the recaps from your discovery calls for setting the next action, getting them in the pipeline, and progressing the deal. I have found in a lot of organizations that discovery calls are critical numbers for hitting their revenue goals. So this particular stage of the sales process needs to be practiced over and over again and enhanced and improved upon. Because if the discovery call goes well, you progress the deal. It moves forward. If it goes poorly, the deal dies. So it is a critical number for most organizations. For my organization, discovery calls are a critical number that we have a whole bunch of metrics that feed into it, and we've practiced the discovery call so that it continues on in our pipeline. Don't underestimate the importance of this step. If you've liked what you've heard, go to weareroadmap.com/podcast and download the Revenue Factory Toolkit, in which you will receive mathematical models and a framework for building your go-to-market system. Also, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, with new episodes dropping on the first and the third Wednesday of every month. I'm Steve Whittington. Thanks for listening. Keep building your Revenue Factory one brick at a time.